Hey there, everybody. I want to tell you something that will allow you to do your homework, and it is one of the most important topics in all of mathematics, and it's something called a function. So you can think of a function as just a box that changes one number into another using the same pattern every time. Example. Here's my function. It's just a magic box. Here's my in number. Here's my out number. Now, a lot of times they use a letter for the in and the out number. So a lot of times the x is what gets used for the input number, and y is what gets used for the output number. We'll get into the x's and y's a little bit later. But let's just see if you can see what the pattern is here, okay? Remember, I'm trying to organize this so you can't. The glare is bad for you. I'm just going to put in some input numbers and output numbers and see if you can guess what the pattern is, okay? So let's say that you put in a 5. Well, I'll tell you, this guy changes that 5 into a 4, okay? Do you have an idea about what the pattern might be? But hopefully you're saying, well, I'm not sure yet. I need more data to see if I'm right. Well, I'll give you more data. Let's say that I put in a 17. This function turns it into a 16. Now, do you see? Were you right? You probably were right. Let me just give you one more. If I put in a 0, can you guess what happens here? -1, right? So there's two ways to show what that pattern is. One is just to say the pattern. It looks like this to me. If you want the pattern, I would write this: to get y, take x and subtract 1. Yeah, right? Isn't that what we just did? Now, you can say that in more shorter. You can say it in a shorter way using the letters. So if you're comfortable with that, that's great. What this says is this. Do you want to know what y equals? Well, it just equals x, and then take away 1. And that's true, isn't it? Like, look at, if our y is 4, then if our x is 5, then to get the y, we take away 1, and shazam, it's 4, isn't it? If our x is 17, we take away 1, and look at, our y is 16. Right? So it works. Either verbally, or if I can use this word algebraically, because we're using letters here. That's what algebra is. We have the pattern. Okay? Let me just give you another one. They're not always that straightforward. Sometimes they're sort of tricky. So if you got that one, fantastic. Let me give you, I'm going to ramp up the difficulty, and some of you still might get it, which is great. Nice work. So let's go with, we have a function, blah, blah, blah. Here's the x and the y. That's also known as, no. I'm just going to give you one vocab. Have you guys ever heard of dependent and independent variables in science, maybe? Well, that's actually having to do with the function. This input number is actually the independent variable. Okay? So I'm just going to write that up here. Independent variable. And this guy is the dependent. Now you might ask, well, why do they use those words? Well, if you look back at the other example here, it's because the y here depends on what the x is, all right? This y here depends on what the x is. So y is the dependent variable. And that would make x the not dependent, so independent. Okay, so let's just give you a tougher one here. If you don't get it, like I said, no biggie. But let me just start with something. So let's say we put in a 2 in here. Then this guy ends up being a 5. Okay? So you might, and it's good to do this, you might already have an idea, except that I told you it was harder, so you might be like, I have an idea, but it's probably wrong. Let me give you a couple more pieces of data. If I put in a 6, then I get a 17. Okay? Now, if you're in class, I'd be saying, are there any guesses here? And maybe some of you would have a guess. Let me give you one more, okay? Let's say that I put in a 10. Then this guy will give me a 29. Now, if you don't see it, don't sweat it. But let me just ask you something. If you multiply this by 3, do you agree you get a 6? That's not a 6 though, is it? If you multiply this by 3, do you agree you get an 18? That's not quite 18, is it? If you multiply this by 3, do you agree you get 30? Not quite 30. Now do you see the pattern? It's this. You multiply these by 3, and then you subtract 1. That's the pattern. So, if you needed to show that pattern, you could say it verbally. Verbally, it's to get y, multiply x by 3, then subtract 1. Perfect. Or, if you're comfortable, I'd love to push you there if you're ready, you can do it algebraically, which is shorter to write, and that's what this is the language that mathematicians use. If you need y, so y equals, what do I got to do? I got to take x and multiply it by 3. Well, mathematicians show multiplication by just doing this. Do you guys remember that? That just means x times 3 or 3 times x. And then subtract 1. Ta-da! That is all I need you to know to be able to do your homework. Okay? Any questions? Definitely email me. Thanks.